Hi everyone, my name is Nicole Wilson and I am the USC Project Specialist for Youth Count. Today I will be going over the 2019 Youth Count Hotspot Training Guide. This guide includes needed information for providers to facilitate youth involvement with hotspot planning for this. On the agenda, we're going to be discussing why hotspot planning is important, who is involved with hotspot planning, what a hotspot is, youth participation, hotspot facilitation, and gift card distribution. The first thing on the agenda is why hotspot planning is important. So the Youth Count helps bring resources, advocacy, and vital information to learn more about the homeless youth population. Hotspot data collection is vital to the Youth Count methodology because Los Angeles is such a large geographic area. We cannot currently cover all of this area to survey, so we take a sample of it and apply what we find to the areas that we don't sample. We need youth providers and the youth that they work with to identify the locations where youth who are currently experiencing homelessness can be found. This information helps guide our survey teams to the areas they need to go to get this vital information. The process of identifying these locations is what we call hotspot planning sessions. Who is involved with hotspot planning? We need both youth provider staff and youth with up-to-date knowledge of where there are high concentrations of youth currently experiencing homelessness to be involved in the hotspot planning process. Provider staff and community partners are not compensated for hotspot planning. Youth participants are compensated a $10 Visa gift card. We want to make sure every youth who participates in hotspot planning sessions are compensated for their time. So please ensure you have the appropriate amount of gift cards for the amount of youth who you are engaging with the hotspot planning session. Do not engage a youth in the hotspot planning process without being able to compensate them, unless you inform them beforehand with a set plan for appropriate compensation with their knowledge and consent. The next thing we're going to be going over is what is a hotspot. The definition of a hotspot is a location where more than 3 unsheltered youth congregate during the day on any given day. We are not looking for hotspot information where 1 or 2 individual youth are residing. These locations would not be considered a hotspot. The minimum requirement for submitting hotspot information either online or in person is 3 youth. Some examples of hotspot locations could be boxing gyms, boys and girls clubs, libraries, metro stations, or parks. Think through where youth who are currently experiencing homelessness hang out and where they could be. Youth participation. So when we're thinking about which youth should be involved in the hotspot planning sessions, we want to think about youth with current lived experience of homelessness or knowledge of hotspot areas, youth from different areas from within your spa, and youth who are socially connected. If you are choosing multiple youth from the same social circles, be mindful that their hotspot information may be similar, and we're trying to get a very diverse picture of where youth are currently experiencing homelessness within your geographic areas. Hotspot facilitation format. So the new facilitation format is meant to be as flexible as possible, and the point is to yield more youth involvement than we have in previous years. We will leave it up to you, the facilitator, to decide which youth to engage and whether it should be individually, in pairs, or as a group. The goal is to have youth be engaged and give honest and accurate information. So based on the youth that are selected to participate, think about what format will yield the best results. As the facilitator, it is your role to ensure the youth involved have all the necessary information to consent to the hotspot planning process. Understand why they are participating. Understand that this process is voluntary. Understand that this information is confidential and for the purposes of serving this population. Understand all of the clear expectations, especially length of time they're going to be included in the hotspot planning session. Understand that they can stop at any time, and understand that their time and knowledge is valuable. Keep in mind that you might have to reiterate some of this information. So now that we have an idea of what the hotspot facilitation looks like with youth, how do we submit this hotspot information? So one of the ways is through an online link, which is accessible via lhasa.maps.arcgis.com, and you'll be able to go on there and submit your data that way. We'll go a little bit more into how exactly that process works. The second way that you'll be able to submit your hotspot data is via printed maps, and attached to these maps will be paper worksheets where you can record the detailed hotspot information such as time of day and how many youth are present in a certain location. These maps will be picked up by the CEC, Community Engagement Coordinator, at the end of hotspot data. Please be advised that if your SPA is unable to utilize either of these methods to collect youth hotspot information, or do not have a plan to meet with youth to collect hotspot information, a hotspot session will be scheduled for you after November 7th. The first part of the facilitation is going to be the welcome and introduction section. As we all know, the youth count process can be complex and confusing, but before we delve into what youth count is and why we're doing it and how we're going to be getting this hotspot information, we want to really do a check-in with youth and see how they're feeling, if they know why they're in the room, if they know each other, if they have any familiarity with you. So we want to take some time to do some introductions. If you're facilitating individually, this time frame might be shorter than the 15 to 20 minutes, but use your best judgment and just make sure not to rush through this section. Rapport building, as we all know, with youth is really important, and it's especially important when we're asking them where their peers are living. So as a reminder, we are looking not only to engage youth that are the most engaged with staff, but youth who may have knowledge about areas that outreach staff or service-involved youth may not be as familiar with. So please keep this in mind again when choosing which youth are going to be participating in hotspot planning. So in a group, we're going to start off with everyone introducing themselves. Include yourself in this process and have everyone state their name along with an icebreaker of your choosing. Some examples are provided below. Thank everyone for their responses and their presence in the space, and then do a check-in to ask everyone how they're feeling and if they were informed of the reason they have been asked to participate in the group. If engaging with an individual, if appropriate, utilize an icebreaker, and if not, do a check-in to ask how they are feeling and if they were informed of the reason why they've been asked to speak with you. The next step in facilitation is explaining to the youth involved in hotspot planning what youth count is, why it happens every year, and why we're asking them to disclose information about their peers and where their peers are living. So we'll start off by giving them a time frame that hotspot planning happens now, but we end up surveying young people at the end of January, from January 22nd to the 31st. You can also link in other roles that are available to them, such as the youth navigator role and the youth surveyor role, if they want to continue to be involved in this process. Next, you're going to want to go into the fact that by giving out this hotspot information, they are also working alongside a community of people that are attempting to improve homeless services for young people in their area. So that means volunteers, drop-in staff, community members, and other youth from different agencies with lived experiences of homelessness that are also involved in the hotspot planning process. And why we're asking them for this information is so that ultimately we can go out at the end of January, survey young people, ask them about their experiences with housing and homelessness and their access to services, so that we can improve those and get funding to where it needs to go. So just let them know about that by participating, they are directly giving back to their community, and that this information that they provide directly impacts available services and housing in their communities. And also that their responses are confidential. We're not giving these out to law enforcement. We just want to be able to talk to these folks out there, and that if they're not comfortable at any point in time, whether it's the beginning of this facilitation process or the end, they can stop participating at any time, and that does not reflect their relationship with the outreach staff or with the drop-in staff that is facilitating this. Finally, we want to really emphasize to them why we are asking them specifically for this information. Why aren't we just using drop-in staff or community members? We are asking them because as youth with lived experience, they are better at identifying who may be experiencing homelessness. And as a continuous issue that comes up is that youth experiencing homelessness are hard to identify because they don't necessarily present in an obvious way. So they are very hard for our teams to identify in comparison to adults. Next, they also have expert knowledge of the regions that we are going to be surveying. So that knowledge is very valuable, which is why we ask youth with lived experience to come on board and be involved in these hotspot sessions every year for Youth Count. The next step of facilitation is inputting the hotspot data, and this can be done either online or through a paper version as we spoke about. So I'll be talking about the online version first. The first thing that you're going to want to do as the facilitator is just make sure that you're being present to advise youth, that we're not just putting them in front of a computer and expecting them to know how to navigate this website. So you're going to start off with the first two sections are going to be asking you what is your email, not the youth email, and then also what your agency name is. The next section will be information that the youth can provide to you, and you can either input for them or they can input themselves depending on their comfort level. So those sections include the number of youth at the identified hotspot, and you'll notice that when you click on that it'll say the minimum amount to input is 1. This is actually incorrect. The minimum amount of youth we are looking for is 3. Again, just reiterating, the definition of a hotspot is a minimum of 3 youth at a given location at a given time. Any detailed information that would be helpful to surveyors would also be included in this section. So that could be what time of day, and a description of the area that would be helpful for surveyors to know. For example, behind a building, at a skate park, or if the area is a safety concern, also known as an area maybe a youth wouldn't feel comfortable going to alone, or they wouldn't recommend another person go to alone. That's information that we want to make sure to have for our survey teams. Then they would use the digital map to zoom in and identify the location by clicking on the mouse. So you can move the pin around to where the youth thinks it would be the most accurate. You can also search based off of cross streets or intersections. For example, you could put in the search bar Hollywood Boulevard and Franklin Avenue to kind of narrow in on those cross streets. Another point that I want to make sure to emphasize is that if there is a single location where different youth are going in groups of 3 at different times of day, these would be 2 separate hotspot entries, not 1. For example, if we had Johnny, Mark, and Philip that were going to a certain location at 9 a.m. and Margaret, Holly, and Jessica at 1 p.m. at the same location, these would be 2 separate hotspot entries, even though they're at the same location. So it would be 1 entry for the first group of youth and 1 for the second. Once you are done, you would then click submit. And if you're using this digital map, you'll have to submit information 1 at a time for every location you identify. So we recommend using this map, 1 with use in a one-on-one format or a small group, a maximum of 3. Again, due to the fact that we want to make sure we're available to advise youth that are going through the online process, or 2 with youth provider outreach staff when they have time. So you can share the link with them and they can submit information on their own. Again, this link is available via the youthcount2019.com website. Also, in terms of submitting your hotspot online, a new addition for this year is that when you are inputting your hotspot information, you will also be able to view the hotspot submissions from other people all over from SPAs 1 through 8. What we want to ensure is that even though we can see the submission of other people, that we are not missing any information due to the assumption that someone else has already submitted in that area. So we want to make sure to be as accurate as possible with the information we're submitting. So my recommendations for when you're inputting your information on the online form specifically is that you zoom in as much as possible to make sure that the other person that submitted before you didn't submit it on a separate side of the street, and keeping in mind that they also might have submitted at a different time of day. So we want to make sure to have as much information as possible. So if you're in doubt about whether your submission has been submitted before based off of the hotspot areas that are indicated on the map, record the data so that we can try to figure that out on the back end. Just being as accurate as possible is what we're aiming to do, so hopefully being able to see where other people's are submitting will help guide your hotspot process as well. The alternative way that you can facilitate hotspot planning with youth is through the paper form. So, just as with the online form, you want to make sure to be present to advise youth and make sure that they understand how to input their information on the map and on the worksheet. So, the paper worksheets and printed maps will be provided to you to capture hotspot data analog. The paper worksheets will have columns of information to fill out and rows for each hotspot location identified. Participants will look on the maps to identify locations. They will use stickers to place on the maps of the hotspot location, and they will give each sticker a unique number. They will then use the worksheet to fill in all the necessary information. The first column of the worksheet is the number they assign to that unique sticker on the map. The second column is the closest major intersection. The third column is the estimated number of people located there. The fourth column is approximate time of day. The last column is a notes column to give survey teams any and all relevant information, specific location information, etc. For paper map forms, please be present and ensure that they are noting any safety concerns, such as areas that they wouldn't want to go to by themselves. And feel free to use electronic Google Maps on your mobile phone or a nearby computer to help youth identify specific geographical markers or intersections that they might not know off the top of their head. Make sure to indicate what side of the street the hotspot is on. Make sure to stay within the borders of the spot map outlined in bold, and remind youth you are there to support if they have any questions. Using paper maps are good for larger groups of youth of 3 or more who are participating at the same time. Once all of this information is gathered, please notify your LASA Community Engagement Coordinator to arrange for all information to be returned to LASA. Facilitation best practices. So these are just some tips and tricks that as you're facilitating, we want to make sure to emphasize with you. And the first thing is that going off script is okay. If you don't say everything word for word, that's fine. You know your youth best, so just make sure to emphasize all the key points we went over today, and you'll be golden. Please take the time to explain the acronyms to youth if you're utilizing them, such as SPA, CEC, or COC. Ensure you have the necessary amount of gift cards for all youth before beginning a hotspot planning session. Do not engage a youth in this process unless we are able to compensate them. If an issue or question comes up that you, for whatever reason, don't know the answer to, let the youth know you will find out for them. It's okay to not know the answer rather than giving out false information. Please feel free to use the youthcount2019.com website to contact your SPA-specific youth count team or to use as a refresher. And finally, just remind youth that we appreciate their time and acknowledge that they are valued in this space. And with all that in mind, you'll have a great And the last part of the facilitation process is making sure that our youth are compensated for sharing this very valuable information with us. So your agency will be given a set number of gift cards, and I know that some people are planning to supplement as well, but we are planning on giving every SPA 37 gift cards. So this number is going to be divided by the number of available providers that are involved in hotspot planning. Your agency will sign a form from LASA with the amount of gift cards your agency was given, and this form will be kept by the Community Engagement Coordinator and re-signed once the hotspot planning and gift cards are used to your agency's capacity. Also, if for whatever reason you do not think you'll be able to utilize all the gift cards given to you, please let your Community Engagement Coordinator know. Your agency will also receive a form to fill out as you give out gift cards to youth who are participating. Have the youth print their name or initial if they're more comfortable, sign or initial, put the date and the full 14 digits of the gift card number. Your agency is liable for compensation for any missing gift cards. Gift card forms are available via the youthcount2019.com website. Thank you so much for your participation and support for this year's Youth Count. We are looking forward to hearing your feedback for the hotspot planning process. Please feel free to contact me if you would like to book an in-person hotspot facilitation or have any questions about anything that we went over today. My email is wilsonnj@usc.edu. Thank you again and good luck with your hotspot sessions.